Ethereals need to be WoW's next playable race. I've talked a lot about Ethereals being playable. They got their new models. They got their, their new gear and everything else. They've been HD up-res. Will Ethereals be playable? I mean, this is something that's been talked about since the days of BC when we first saw them in Netherstorm. Obviously, I think it'd be an easy win for Blizzard. It'd be something real quick for them to implement, and a lot of people would come back just to play as Ethereals. If they're ever going to do it, I think it'd have to be in this patch or in the coming expansion, right? Let's find out what Marcellian has to say about why Ethereals need to be playable.
Hello there. After watching that WoWcast, I started to get very excited for 11.2, but noticed one thing just wasn't mentioned. A crucial thing that we have been asking for 18 or so years. WoW needs Ethereals as a playable race. Recently, we have made a video about the 10 things Midnight needs, and amid
Murloc, playable Murlocs would bring so many people. Look, if I had to think about like what class would bring the most people back, Vrykul are probably up there. That would be like a big one because a lot of people are Wrath of the Lich King Andes. They love rats, so Vrykul would be a throwback. I know people will say Tuskar because that's always been a fan favorite, but I think that's kind of like a niche. Like that's like a very loud niche crowd led by Taliesin. Like they love, but I don't know if a lot of people really want that. I think Murlocs would be a fucking meme, like a joke, like it'd be kind of funny. But I don't know if that would bring like a ton of people. I think Murlocs would actually have the opposite effect too, where a lot of people would be saying, well, this is why I don't play WoW anymore. It's a fucking stupid dead game. Making Murlocs a playable race. What kind of shit is this? I think Ethereals are probably like the closest to an overall win. Like bringing playable Ethereals back. They've been around since BC. They've been around this entire time transmogging our gear. A lot of people have always wanted to be them. Yeah, I think playable Ethereals would be the easiest win to bring the most people back if Blizzard ever actually did it.
This particular thing, but I believe it is
and then for classes, it'd probably be Tinkers. Tinkers would bring the most people back if they ever did that.
Time. Not only do we need it, I will tell you why that is the case and also how this can be realistically implemented based on previous released races or allied races. Let's see if we can convince Blizzard to give us something cool. Why should we get Ethereals as a race and not something else? Well, first of all, is because they are cool AF. Ethereals are a being of pure energy and use specially arcane-infused cloth wrappings to withhold their soul, basically act as a vessel so they can physically manifest into reality. Why do they need to do that, Flame, you ask? Well, it's because this big old Void Lord munched their whole bodies, dear viewer.
Whoa, what are these? Look at these. These are new. I haven't seen... Look at this whited out Ethereals. These are really cool. I love the white gear on the bandage look. This is pretty badass. Now, like, people wonder, like, oh, okay, well, how are you going to customize a race that doesn't even have a face? Well, look just between these two. There's some differences here. This guy's, I guess, is wearing a hood. Maybe they are the same. But just like the different wrappage, right? Also, Ethereals, we've seen different kind of colors within their ethereal body. Like, we've seen more purple or more, like, on the whitish side in terms of their ethereal color. The colors of the bandages you can change. How much of the skin is actually exposed could be something that's customizable. Look at this guy even. He's got like a ninja looking like hair tie coming off the back. That's kind of cool. So there are ways to customize these guys even though they don't have a face. Right? We've seen Blizzard create tons of customization for things like Drakthir. They could do tons of unique stuff with these guys. We'll see if they actually go through and pull it off. But yeah, I mean, Ethereals have always just been badass. They really have. Even their voices are badass.
Whole bodies, dear viewer, and their soul or energy avatar is all they have left. Unless they retcon this
more pinks, more lavenders, more passion. Yeah.
In any case, Dimensius is a character we are definitely going to interact with. It ties into Xal'atath, and as far as we know, Xal'atath was responsible for Koresh to be destroyed in the first place. Before we dive into that topic, we have the second reason to get Ethereals, and that's because you, dear viewer, don't want it.
What?
Let me explain. Ethereals are now older than the Warcraft universe has been when they got introduced, so it's suffice to say they are a core part of the game, tied into now the third or fourth expansion, depending on how you want to look at it. And them being added creates a precedent that you will care about. Let's say you are the kind of person that wants ogres as a race, or maybe the Pandaria Jinnu, or maybe Murlocs.
Yeah,
Whichever the case, ever since new races were started to get added, they were always that, new. It was almost always a race that hasn't existed in the game, with the exception of 2 or 3. Outside Magar Orcs, Darkaren Dwarfs, and Zandalari, which they got a whole new model unlike what they were already portrayed as in the game, every other
right.
race, of which there are currently 9 of, were essentially newly created races never before seen in the game, with their culture at most speculated or implied. I bet
Right.
you have maybe 5 other races you would want before Ethereals, but unless we have a Murloc expansion in between Midnight and Last Saturn, you might be waiting for this for 5 to 10 more years before you can ever play a Murloc in World of Warcraft. Ethereals are a race in that, can we get these guys we've enjoyed for over a decade as a playable race in the game? Bucket.
Yeah,
Opening
would
up
set a
that
new
bucket
precedent.
just makes it more likely we would get other races in the hopes that they can do it at an obviously way faster rate to be able to cover all of them by the time we have grandkids.
Right.
Which, by the way, we already made a video on what we think the top 10 races that need to
Naga have been another one that's always been a popular ask for sure.
be added are, with a link to it
And
in the
ogres.
description. The third reason, which is the more likely and plausible, is the fact that it makes sense. We are obviously traveling to their home
It
world
does make sense.
and addressing their existential threat that they battle for, not sure, over 1,000 years now. Lore nerds, am I right? So them siding with us makes sense.
Yeah.
Certain factions like the consort
It's not just about them siding with us that makes sense. They're already, they already have kind of, worked their way into the Horde and Alliance. They transmog our gear. They're in every capital city. They're already kind of a part of our culture. They're there. One thing that makes sense about them joining now is their numbers will grow, right? We're going to their home planet. Right now, whatever scattered number of Ethereals exist, it can't be that high in terms of population. So if you suddenly made them a playable race, and all of a sudden their population quadruples overnight because now everyone's running Ethereals all over the place, it wouldn't make as much sense. But right now, if you go to their home world and you suddenly, you get an influx of new ethereal immigrants. Don't call ICE on them, guys. All these new ethereals coming into coming to Azeroth will make sense now that they could be playable now, and that there's going to be a big population boom of ethereals everywhere, right? So in terms of the lore in that aspect, yeah, it would make a lot of sense.
has already been an ally of ours since the Burning Crusade, and we have cooperated with them for decades at this point. Their allegiance can be shady, and most of the time very opportunistic. We butted heads with their Nexus princes and princesses a bunch of times, and won every time. Lore-wise, it would make sense for them to see us as a veritable force against the incoming void, especially if we save their homeworld or open ours officially
Maybe Monarch,
to them.
yeah.
It also wouldn't be the
Monarch makes a decent point here. Typically, anytime that you use a toy or trinket proc to turn into one of the races, kind of guarantees they will never be playable. There's examples that go both ways of that. I know what you're saying, that, yeah, when they make a toy that makes you a race, it's kind of a fun thing because it's not a playable race, and they're doing that because it's not going to be. But we had plenty of toys in what's it called, Legion, that turned us into the Nightfall, and Jesus Christ, what was that fucking elven race in Suramar? Why can't I remember their damn name right now? They're in the fucking Horde, whatever. We had plenty of toys that turned us into them, and we literally had an entire daily quest line that would turn us into them. Plenty of toys that you could get that would turn you into them, and then eventually we got to be them. Yes, the Nightborn. Yes, there's plenty of examples, probably more examples that go against that go with what you're saying. That if you have a toy that turns you into that race, you'll never be able to become that race. That's true. But there are examples that go the other way, where we've had races added to the game later on that existed as a toy at first.
first time we have approached a new race, helped with their struggle of survival, and got rewarded with them joining our ranks at the end of the respective campaign. So if we do get Ethereals, it would likely be in 11.2.7 or the pre-patch for Midnight. If there was ever a time to make them playable, it sure is now by the end of this year. The next best reason as to why is because with their technomancy we can actually take the fight to the void, likely in the second chapter of Midnight, since the first will take place from what we know, in Quel'Thalas and Northrend, as confirmed by Metzen when he said these zones will be revamped for the next expansion. The fight against the Void is a very peculiar one, since the Void is a force not bound to reality. A less
Yeah.
peculiar fight, need I remind
He's
you.
basically saying we're going to need them to fight against the Void. Yeah, just he's going to use the Demon Hunters. We needed Demon Hunters to fight against the Legion. We needed Death Knights to fight against the Lich King. So those are classes versus a race. But yeah, I guess I kind of see where he's going with this.
Was against the Burning Legion, which we addressed by shattering the veil that separated Azeroth from Argus.
Ethereal Demon Hunters? Holy crap, that would be crazy. I could imagine that would actually be freaking badass. Could you imagine them with warglaives equipped, and they're just dashing around in their bandages? That'd be pretty crazy. That'd be a popular one.
Keystone, the name slips my mind. When we went to Argus, their war machine production.
I think ethereal mages would be really cool.
The same style of technology is needed to eventually fight the Void on their home turf. Now, whether we do that in Midnight or Blast Titan, it doesn't really matter, because my guess would be that we still need the Ethereals for it.
Yeah,
of course.
I think like playing as Ethereals overall, like an Ethereal Arcane Mage or an Ethereal Shadow Priest, like those two classes, that's lore stackage on top of lore stackage. It'd be pretty badass.
Let us lay waste to this
D.
realm.
Mustaine, thank you for the follow. Welcome to our Scourge. I can't imagine an Ethereal Death Knight. That doesn't make sense to me. Like, how the hell does an Ethereal come back and then get killed by the... Like, they came to our world and then die and get raised by a Lich King? That probably won't happen. I hope they don't make that. Even though I'd love to play as an Ethereal, and I only play Death Knight, I would not want an Ethereal Death Knight. But besides that, the two classes I mentioned, Arcane Mage, Shadow Priest, those would be really cool.
As always, the WoW team can just decide that these guys will just be a renowned faction that story-wise gives us the tech, and then fly off into the distance. And with this last point, I also went over how these could be introduced into the game, since we don't really know the story planned for 11.2.5 and 11.2.7. It's not clear when the best time to introduce them would be, but it would definitely be at the latest in the Midnight pre-patch.
Yeah.
The reason this is the most likely is because they can package deal the early access to the allied race as a pre-order for the expansion. Something they have done so before with BFA.
Now, one reason why I don't know if that's going to be the selling point is because I think player housing is going to be the pre-order feature. That's what I think. Yes, they've done pre-order features with races or classes like Demon Hunter. That was a pre-order feature. Or Cultirans and Zandalari. Weren't they a pre-order feature for the BFA? Maybe. I think so. But yes, they've done stuff like that before. But I think this pre-order feature is going to be player housing. That's what it's going to be.
Imagine the cover art for Midnight, having the Ethereals there and Xal'atath. Maybe they won't use her, since we had her already on this expansion's art cover, but possibly Dementius, or a Void Lord of some sort.
Be a cool box.
That would sell better than kidneys. So now that we 100% confirmed that Ethereals will be playable in Midnight, what classes should they have? Obviously, if the devs decide on it, they can just be everything, but that's boring. The first that always comes to mind are rogues and mages.
Oh yeah, I forgot rogues. Yeah, ethereal rogues would be cool, for sure.
Pretty much most Ethereals we encountered were either stealing artifacts in some way or using arcane and void magic to do gnarly stuff. As long as we know what kind of a race they are, we can probably assume that anything that has to do with a lot of physicality will normally be out of the question, which rules out the plate classes, monks, and I'm debating hunters. To be fair, hunters could be fine. There are those phase hunter beasts in Terracar that used to blink, if I recall.
Yeah, I think an ethereal hunter with a cool voidy looking pet, I think that'd be a cool one. I think ethereal hunters could work for sure.
It would make sense for them to be their pets alongside any exotic beasts within their vast collections. We do have more freedom when it comes to the magic classes. With mage out of the way, the next most obvious ones are warlock and priest. Once upon a time, Void was part of Warlock fantasy since they can literally summon a Void Walker. But also before the lore of Void Lords was fully written, they had a glyph for the Void Walker to turn it into a Void Lord. Obviously, that makes no sense today, but the connection is confirmed at least. Priest for obvious reasons though, because shadow.
Yeah.
But would be an interesting development if they can argue wholly in any way. Maybe part of their culture before they got destroyed by Dementius was
Yeah, they could have dabbled in
part
the
of
light.
a priest culture that venerated the light in some way. I would probably rule out Shaman and Druid due to their super chaotic
Yeah.
and unnatural nature.
That would
It's
make
also
sense.
difficult to make them demon hunters, considering the
But could you imagine ethereal druids where like there's a whole animation where their bandages unwrap and then rewrap in an animal form? Oh my god. People would eat that shit up. Look, Blizzard misses out, and I feel like on a lot of chances for Druid specifically, and how much some people would love to see different Druid races. Like I even talked about it back when we get the Mechanomes. Remember, like just the transformation of a Mechanome into different animals would be fucking crazy. Like literally just create Transformers. Even make the sound like the fucking noise that they make. That'd be so cool. But Ethereals, it's not going to happen. Ethereal Druids is not going to happen. But I'm just spitballing about how cool it could be if they did.
demon hunter lore is individuals eating the heart of a demon.
That is a
they
good idea,
subdue,
yeah.
That infuses
Sometimes I
their
have them.
body with fel and turns their existence into a constant internal battle with said demon to prevent it to not take over. Given the lack of a stomach, or any digestive system for that matter, not to mention an actual body, Ethereals would be hard-pressed
Yeah.
to partake in the demonic ritual.
Right.
But this leaves us with an opportunity
Also, no reproductive system, I think. So that's a thing. Yeah, no fun for the Ethereals
for
anymore.
a new class entirely. Well,
That's why they're all
two
angry.
actually that come to mind. That would fit perfectly with Ethereals, and imagine the shakeup for a WoW expansion to come with 2 new classes in an age where it's been alive for 21 years at that time. The first would be the Technomancer. Technomancy is basically their magic system where they combine arcane with technology to control it and create stuff. And this wouldn't be the first new race with a new class that's just available to them to be released. Thank you, Dragonflight. Given
Yeah, I
their
don't
proclivity
see
to
this happening, though.
acquire artifacts, irrespective of the owner's free will, the toys and possibilities are vast. Maybe Technomancer wouldn't have enough juice to be a full class and could be a spec of something very similar, which is the Tinker, a class
Oh,
we have
God.
discussed ad nauseum on our
I mean, I think Tinker could happen. I thought it was going to happen this patch, if it was ever going to happen. But one thing Ethereals need, besides classes, is they should get free transmogs. No doubt. Like, their racial should be transmogging for free. That should just be their thing. They can transmog themselves whenever they want. And it wouldn't be like that big of a deal because everyone has a transmog mount now. But lore-wise, it would just be cool. Like, hey, I'm an Ethereal. I transmog anything, anytime, anywhere. For free. On myself.
channel, which would also fit with the story we had in Undermine. The second class would be actually the cooler one, and I'm not settled on a name. It could be anything between Mage Hunter, Spellbreaker, or Mana Stealer. Aspects of these already exist into WoW, and with Illidan's Mana Burn in Warcraft 3, Blood Elf's Spellbreaker and Mana Manipulation spells in the same game, and aspects of Ethereals as a culture of hunters and arcane manipulators, this could fit so well. And it could be the male class we always wanted. I can definitely see it have a tanking spec as well, an actual tank that deals with mana deliberately as part of its design. Maybe you have a better
Interesting.
idea, which you can shove into the comment section, and also watch our video on the 10 races WoW desperately needs right here. Spoilers, Ethereals are also there.
Yeah, there you go. Cool video. Yeah. And obviously playable Ethereals, it's going to be talked about like for the entirety of this patch and all of the Midnight expansion. It's going to keep coming up. People are going to keep talking about it because people want it. Now, will Blizzard do it? I don't know. I think if they're going to, it's going to be around this time or within the next year. And it'll be definitely a big fan base winner for sure. So we'll see. Nice video from Marcellian, and playable Ethereals would be a nice thing.